Hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh. It's Monday, the 8th of August, 2022. I do something called the Growth Strategy Podcast, where I try and introduce you to interesting people that can help your business or career. And today with Charlie is someone that I've been trying to get on. We've been trying to get on since May, I think it was, when we first kind of got it in the diary. And the aim of the podcast and what we look to do is introduce you to really interesting people that can either help your business or career. Kind of go into their backstory, their journey, how did they get where they are, what's their modus operandi, what makes them tick, and that kind of thing, in a way that we really want to kind of share lessons learned and practical experience, and also introduce you to real people that, yes, it's wonderful to hear from Stephen Bartlett and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and that kind of thing. But often for most of us, if you run a business that's less than £100 million, which, you know, Charlie's getting up there, it's really interesting to meet real people that kind of do that. So I try and do this each week. And if you get involved in the comments, they should kind of pop up on my screen as well. I'll bring them in if it's appropriate. And then we also clip this up and it goes on to Spotify, YouTube, loads of kind of different social platforms as well. So Charlie, I'm just going to bring you in. There we go. So you're now live and people can see and hear you.
Hello, hello.
Perfect. Would you be happy to give a quick kind of 30-60-second intro just about who you are, where you're from, to set the scene before we kind of dive in? Is that okay?
Sure, yeah. So I'm from a family business background. My background is my family business, which is a site in Newcastle, Northeast England, where we have 150 different businesses. It's a business centre. I'm the fourth generation to be operating on this site in this district next to Newcastle upon Tyne. And the original family business was a delivery business, which my great-grandfather set up. He'd been a delivery manager for a department store. He didn't get promoted to the top job, and his wife said he ought to set up his own business to provide employment for his four sons, which he did. And they grew the first weekly truck from Newcastle to London.
Wow.
And built the business to be a top 5 UK furniture removal business. My father was the only member of his generation to take over in 1963, and he sold the business in 1983 to a national chain called Pickford's. Wow. But he kept this depot behind, and I came here about 15 years ago, and we've been developing it into a business centre, and it's become a sort of mecca for the creative industries in the northeast of England. And through that, we've also transformed it into the kind of WeWork of Newcastle, with loads of space, loads of parking, and we also have donuts makers, bakery, chocolatiers, barbers, and tech businesses, architects, etc., etc. So that's the kind of home base that I had when I came back from working in London for 25 years, 12 years ago. And I've done a number of other different things since then, getting my fingers in pies with a tech business that's been growing massively in the pandemic, with a recruitment business that's actually based in London but gone full hybrid and national. That's tech recruitment, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a flavour to get us going.
But I mean, what I find interesting is I genuinely love to speak to people from different backgrounds who, you know, come from different places and different, you know, educational backgrounds and heritage, I guess. And it's really fascinating to, I think you're not the first, but it's when you have history behind you in terms of your grandfather and the way it's kind of passed through the family is brilliant, because it sets the scene that when people, one of the things that I love to do about when I ask people's journey and where did they grow up and that kind of thing, it's because you have people who grew up in a rough part of Middlesbrough, or, you know, in different places, that they actually relate to people that are from their area who come from different places. And it's really fascinating to really bring together people from different backgrounds to kind of, you know, feel and learn from the experience, because there'll be people that have never met someone maybe as successful as you are that actually would really kind of like to tap into that in a way that they never got elsewhere, if that kind of makes sense.
It's a theme of mine, is which is possibly the same, possibly different, is generational journeys. Seeing as I'm the fourth generation, and my great-grandfather was a delivery manager, the family built capital and held it together. And I went to boarding school, public school. You know, now my school would cost £40,000 a year. Very difficult for me with 4 boys. and that's a heck of a place to be. And it's interesting how different generations have built capital and created opportunity, or we in different measure. I've got 12 cousins, have seized opportunity. There's a little click in your questions about my short political career where I ran to be the mayor of Newcastle in 2019, but some of that was minded around, opportunity is not, ability is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And it's interesting, because we're talking about how do you make a success of things, and some of that is if you get the chances and if you seize the chances, and it's from wherever you are. I'm a great follower on LinkedIn of John Caldwell, the Phones for You billionaire, who talks often about his journey, and he started from pretty much nothing, and his brother, and having a shop that they turned into selling mobile phones, and he created a sort of £1 billion for himself out of that.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So it's interesting how I'm fascinated how you can help people on that journey, how you can travel yourself on that journey, because there's always a bigger yacht.
Yes.
There's always for me, I think that's growth mindset. I'm always thinking, how can I improve? How can I learn? How can I grow a business that's going to be, get there and get bigger? Because I think I started from, albeit a family business, in the 70s when I grew up. There was a lot of industrial unrest. There was hyperinflation. The British economy was the sick man of Europe. My mum kept buying home products or cars that broke because they were poorly manufactured. It's in that context that I thought, I better try and make some stability in my life by starting my own business.
No, cool. So can I ask what you were like at school? Were you rebellious? Were you very academic? Were you the opposite? How did you experience life at that age?
Quite a swot at school. I was quite. It's funny. Maybe it is a part of I sort of look back on it. When I was 7, I was in school, and there were 3 terms. Christmas, Easter, and summer term, and I was top of the class in each of those terms. And age 7, they then put me up a year. So instead of being successful and carrying on with that cohort, I was put in with a load of kids who are a year older than me, and I was then like on the back foot, and I was never top of the class ever again.
I've questioned a few times why schools do that, because when you get to 25, it makes no difference at all if someone's 25 or 26. And it's that I almost think it disadvantages that same child who was obviously acing everything. They don't get like a special grade because they took the failure, or maybe they do, but it's almost, for me, you would keep that in the same cohort and just be really good, and maybe you get separated out at university or wherever. I've always wondered why.
So I was kind of able at school, and in junior school, I got to senior school, and I am quite interested in intellectual stuff, in wide-ranging culture, philosophy, economics. And I'm quite diligent. So I do always go into things probably overthinking and overprepared, but that served me well.
Yeah, it's not always a bad thing.
I know it's also, I always fundamentally wanted to have my own business. I think that's the smart choice if you can build capital, because if you have capital, then you can do a hell of a lot more in your life than if you're a salary man for somebody else. Yeah, that's the thesis of that book, Rich Man, Poor, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Which is a kind of bestseller, and I read it, and I'm so all over that, because that's kind of, luckily, I came from a family business background, but I'm a small business guy, and the business behind Hoult's Yard, we rent space to small business people, and I've always chimed with that, and I've always been a customer service person, delivering to other people, because even in any business, you've got customers, masters, investors, and it's even worse in family when your chairman is your dad.
I can imagine. Because what I think is really interesting is that you've had a very varied but successful kind of career. And it's the classic thing of where anyone can be lucky once or inherit a family business and take that forward. But to do it from scratch, fresh, multiple times, obviously shows there's real skill there and understanding of the market. And almost, where do you feel that, as a child or growing up, did your dad or your granddad teach you things, or did it just come naturally over time?
I think I always had I was always keen, and I used to write business plans all the time. And
From what age?
"Ooh, that's an empty."
From what age?
Ooh, well, from about 10 or 12.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be like, there's a building. I remember there's a building which is still randomly completely empty next to the City Hall in Newcastle. It's boarded up, and it was boarded up when I was about 12. And I was like, why don't we rent that and turn it into a cafe? And then I was like, how many tables could you get in there? How big is it? How much would it cost to buy the tables? How much would it cost for the salary? So I always sort of built spreadsheets in my mind, and I used to do them all on scraps of paper. And my mum keeps everything, probably has like drawings of how many, do we do round tables? Do we square tables? So I was always sort of scenario planning. And when spreadsheets were invented, I also had a summer job looking at financial planning. And that was like, oh my God, that's the tool I can use. And many times have I done December, January, February, March, all those months, and then listed down all the components of a business, the top line and the bottom line. I just love the bottom line.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting is that as an engineer myself, I'm built around problem solving, even to the point of taking the washing out of the washing machine. In my head, I automatically work out, but I need to go up the stairs again in 2 minutes time for something else. So I'll leave it there. And for a business, it's that continuous improvement to look at, actually, we could fit an extra table in there. We could and almost regardless of what your business is, I think it really helps to have that kind of analytical mind that, yes, you need the creativity to do it, but it's that continual process that you've probably been in business now for a while, that actually the ability to just improve year after year after year, I imagine, is actually kind of quite useful.
Yes, it is. I am quite obsessive about that sort of thing.
But I think all the best people are. And again, all of your best kind of sports people that get to the very, very top. I'm a basketball player, so I always look at Michael Jordan and stuff. But they were obsessive about every single detail, from where they sleep, what time they go to bed, when they wake up, and the practice. And I think what really comes across is that it's when you can tell when someone loves what they do, that they go into detail that nobody else would notice because they're doing it for themselves. As you actually get a lot of people that want to get rich quick or just do stuff for the sake of doing it, but their heart's not really in it. And because of that, the customer service and the love for what they want to do probably won't stay forever because they're just trying to get rich quick. As with someone that's actually genuinely in it for 10, 20, 30 years to build something, I think it does show. I think it's kind of quite important. So after you finish school, what was your career journey? I know we won't go through everything, but you've had a really fascinating journey.
I went to university in Manchester, and I read English literature. Then I went to Cardiff University and did a postgrad in journalism. And but then I kind of realised that I like comms.
Yep.
And even at university, I ran a magazine. I ran a band, which we played at like show band, covers band. And so I always enjoyed managing things and delivering stuff. So just being a journalist, just writing your 100-word piece or your 200-word piece never was kind of enough. So I went and worked for a comms agency that did the marketing for Microsoft. I actually had, as ever, the SME guy. I had the little clients that no one else kind of wanted, and I never managed to work with Microsoft, which is probably my David versus Goliath instinct always. My client, which was called Harvard Graphics, invented a program that was killed by PowerPoint, and a spreadsheet that was killed by Excel. So yeah, I think that was your question. What did early career was marketing. I kind of thought, this is fascinating because it's quite cerebral, thinking about marketing strategy, working as a consultant with a number of different clients and pitching for business and winning clients that were, had real variety of different business problems. I actually set up my own business quite quickly doing that, taking that model. And we had lots of little different clients. So we were marketing for tech businesses in the mid to late 90s. And, then as now, businesses were getting, there's a guy with an idea there was a techie. It might have been some niche estate agency, software for estate agents to sell houses more efficiently. They prove some traction with the product. They get some venture capital, and hey presto, they need more marketing, more sales. They need a new logo, better look and feel, websites, mail shots, marketing activity. And my agency that I built up did all of that. And it was a fascinating journey into lots of other people's businesses. So, you're saying about the entrepreneur journey. Well, I was there with lots of people, guiding them as often their principal consultant, helping them with their narrative and their business model, because it was kind of, you see 5, you see 25. Often they need to repeat the same sort of patterns. And so we were guiding them to growth.
No, because one of the things that I don't know if you agree or not, but as a business owner, you need various different skills. You need to be good at finance, you need to be good at organizing, whichever. But I think the one thing which can make or break any business is comms, it's PR, it's promotion. That actually you can have an average product that is promoted well, do very well, and you can have an exceptional product which has poor comms, poor messaging, poor graphics, poor brand, and it tanks. And it's one of those things that I don't think is taught enough or accepted widely enough of how important it is, that as a lot of the engineering firms that I have worked with and still work with now, marketing is almost, or was almost, deemed as brochures, the odd trade stand, and just fairly low level social stuff, when actually the more you understand about the customer and the vision, and even before we came live on air, you would ask about the headlines and stuff, a solid grasp of that. Do you think that's really made a real difference to your business career because you know it inside out?
I think an even dirtier word in the world is sales. But if you can't sell anything, you can't get the tills ringing, if you can't get the money through the door, then your product, your business isn't going to thrive. And awareness is a key part of that. And living the awareness and understanding the dynamics of that has been central to my growth as a business person and the businesses I've backed and been able to work with. And so, yes, there's marketing, but it's like here, I'm constantly selling the site, Hoult's Yard, as a space and as an idea, because there's something about brand, yes, and I've got an intrinsic understanding of that, but it's also awareness.
Yeah. So that particular business, and I'm going from memory here, you grew from virtually nothing to 400 people. Is that right?
Opencast Software.
That's
my marketing. So
yes.
Back in 2004 to 2008, I had a marketing agency which was called Wilson Harvey, and we'd grown to about 30 people, and we merged with another agency called Lowy, and Raymond Lowy had founded that business quite a number of years ago in the US, but it had ended up being owned and run in London. And we merged with that business because it has a sort of exciting brand to conjure with, in the same way that Vodafone created a brand for mobile phones and then went and bought other businesses around Europe and cobbled them together in a master brand. And that was our strategy with Lowy, was that we get venture funding, buy and build and grow the business. So we, from 60 people over 4 years with 20 something million pounds of venture capital, we grew a business with 400 people.
Wow. Because what I was fascinated by is that I'm in the middle of I'm at the start of my current growth journey now. But what I'm really fascinated by is that at a certain point you plan for an exit and you eventually exit. How quickly did you get the hunger to do something else? Did you take 6 months off, sit on the beach, or were you instantly already starting to think about different properties or different ideas and different things?
So along the way in the sort of merger and acquisition journey for me, I did actually, before this, I bought a publishing business. It was like 200, maybe 100 grand or something like that. I bought from some founders, and it had they were technology newsletters. The principal one was called Financial IT. There was another one called Insurance Technology Report. And we set up a business called Call Centers in Finance, another newsletter. And that I got offers to buy that business for a bigger financial publishers. And I ultimately sold that business for like 600, 700 grand. So we built the profits over like 5 years, and they paid 5 times the profits. Get to 600 grand, so whatever that's 125 grand profit stream that we had in that business. But what I learned was that they were this is the arbitrage, the difference between our small business with a 5 times multiple and their bigger business, which was quoted on the stock exchange at 18 times multiple. And the arbitrage, the difference in those was, so they paid us 5 times the earnings. Let's, for the maths say it's £100,000. They paid me 500,000, and they lumped those profits into their group on the stock market at 18 times, and the value to them was 1.8 million. So they paid me 500 grand, which I was delighted with, but they then increased the value of their company by a further 1.3 million to get to 1.8 million. And I was thinking, brilliant, giant Ponzi scheme. Now I understand. Let's do some of that. And so I was interested in buying marketing agencies. This is on the pure financial engineering aspect, which is kind of where the PE venture capital guys are. But I was interested in how you could glue together a business through acquisition. And we pitched, understanding enough about that, to venture people. First, I was backed by a guy who I'd met along the way called Luke Johnson, who was chair of Channel 4. He's like if he'd been doing a little bit less, he would be the sort of classic dragon. And the Dragon's Den was started a bit later on, but he was like a dragon for me, an angel investor who taught me stuff, pushed me along. And then we grew with some international investors who wanted to get into the UK market, and then 2 US venture firms who put in the 20 million. And we then bought like 15 different businesses, very small to start with, and then integrated them. And there was some of the learning was, how do you integrate smaller businesses?
Because one of the things that I love about this, and I'm really enjoying this, is that you'll know yourself, you have a lot of people out there that talk the talk, but they haven't actually been there and done it. They've just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they want to be a consultant and coach. But I love the fact that you've been there, done it multiple times. You've had the scars, you've seen it fail, you've seen it work. And it's that people will genuinely love to hear and experience this, because it's not everyone has, and it's really kind of fascinating to hear. And then I'm conscious, and you can cherry pick the ones that we talk about, but just some of your kind of titles and things you're involved with. You've got chair of Dynamo North East. You are co-chair of Opencast Software, and they're definitely going to talk about Opencast. You've got the MD of HyHubs, because you also have multiple properties. It's not just Holt's Yard. Do you still have the one in the city centre?
Yes. Haymarket, Haylofts, yeah.
But again, there's a lot of people are interested in property. A lot of people that likewise, people, I don't know, you can tell me how much time you've got and we can cut it short.
I've got plenty of time.
But the point is, there's so much value there that people, I think, would love to hear about. Can we start with Dynamo North East? About what is it and what do they do?
So I moved back to the north. So to finish the kind of lowy journey, I built this business, plugged it all together. It was extremely challenging we bought a third. So say there was a business with £1 million profits, and latterly we were buying businesses of that scale, maybe 3 or 4 of them. And if they had £1 million profits, there was 6 times multiple on that. So the owners were due £6 million, we would give them £2 million in cash up front, £2 million in shares in the bigger group, and then an earn-out plan over a number of years, like say 2 or 3 years, where if they hit their profit target, they got the next 2 million. If they exceeded it, then it ratcheted up even more, so they could make even more than the 6 million, because into the group, that was great. Unfortunately, with the credit crunch, some of the first things that when there's a squeeze and a recession, people stop doing is marketing as a lead indicator into recession. People are going, oh, we'll just keep that brochure or that website or the creative for that ad campaign for another 6 months, a year, and just bash it out rather than reinvent and spend money. So our profits in Lowy Group went down from 6 million to 4 million, but we had like 24 million of debt. So that was a strain. I actually got fired, relieved of duties by the chairman who I had hired and the board, because I think as one of the distractions in a kind of quite a panicky recession, people were like bailing out. And it was a savior to me after the fact, because I was relieved of the duties of having to turn around a business where the predominant background was people aren't going to spend on marketing. So it would have been extremely stressful to kind of try and turn it around and squeeze things together. But also we had these maybe 20 odd quite high owning partners who were also, it was a bit like running the European Union, because there were these countries, these different companies, and 2 or 3 people in each of those who were wanting a success. And some of the challenges are, you know, like Germany versus Greece. One country, one company was very strong and even trading well in a recession. So they're going, give me more, you know, I want to see growth. But they were connected with a company, unfairly calling it Greece for this example, which wasn't doing well and was trying hard. And, you know, when the chips are down, does everyone pull together, or do people go, you know, I'll look after number one, I want this. And while I, you know, felt for a long time I had kind of unfinished business, at the same time I'm like, move
it's
on,
a tough gig.
it ain't going to happen. So, you know, what am I going to do next? And I stewed in my own thoughts for a couple of years, and I ultimately never wanted to work for somebody else. I had a very interesting time sort of, you know, saying I was 40, just nearly 40, and you know, am I going to do something, you know, left field, go and run a bed and breakfast in Zanzibar, lifestyle, all of that. And I ended up coming back to kind of what I knew, which was the tech sector and marketing. And and also I kind of my sort of modus operandi, which is finding people in sectors which I really like, who I really rate, who have typically worked for other people, but not set up their own business. And there's a company in Cambridge I met along the way called IQ Capital, and they have IQ Angels. And so I see myself as an IQ angel. I've got some, you know, ideas, experience, intellectual property, and a small amount of money, because I cleared a bit of money, but not, you know, zillions. And that was enough of a runway to help a couple of businesses. And so I set up a recruitment business with a friend of mine who said, if I'm going to do this, I'll bring my 2 peer colleagues in. So B. Kayla, Jill Arnold, and Rachel Murray. We're 25% each in a business called Futureheads Recruitment, which is in London. And that was where I sort of provided the plumbing, the you know, entrepreneurial vision, the accounting, the lease, you know, working on leases, the invoice discount, you know, factoring services to help pay the cash flow and build that up. So I was like all of those kind of basic building blocks, and they were the superheroes out there doing the recruitment stuff. And that business is now 15 million turnover with about 50 people.
But I think what's really fascinating, and I don't know if people will kind of pick up on this, but a really good entrepreneur or business group finds skill sets and backgrounds that mesh together, that probably from your upbringing, you understood leases and, you know, different agreements, and it all then has built on your career over time to really, it's like the jigsaw pieces that fit perfectly together. That actually experience, there's nothing better than actually lived experience on different things. And even when in a former role, I was head of marketing and strategy for a company called Techmar that floated on the stock market in the Northeast. And our plan and the strategy was exactly the same about how do you find complementary offerings that fit within the same supply chain that help you achieve something much greater than a whole. And it's really fascinating to go through that journey, because in some ways it's just a giant puzzle and you have to see the value that maybe somebody else doesn't see to really kind of bring these together. So after that, you moved back up to the Northeast?
I did, yes. Yeah, my wife was a dermatologist and she became a consultant at the RVI, the main hospital in Newcastle, and dragged me home. She's from Liverpool, I'm up here. And I came to work with my dad to take over this business as a kind of springboard to what am I going to do with the rest of my life. And we've been quite innovative in building a community here and gelling that, and they call it in the property world place making a sense of place, kind of curating the journey and the comms. And that business is, you know, gone from strength to strength. And along the way, I met a guy, Mike O'Brien, who he had twins in the same class as I had twins when they started school in year 5 or whatever it's called. No, year 3. And we both realized that we had complementary skills in the same market, which was tech for the finance sector, which is what I've been doing a lot of in London with my marketing agency work. And we decided to set up a business. Holt's Yard had a big spare office that we couldn't rent, but it made the business look great to start with, that we got space to grow into 40 desks. And Mike, you know, got the band back together from a business that he'd been in. And I supported, like I had with Futureheads, on some of the board discipline, commercials, and network of partners for all of that. And the business is now just 10 years old. So Futureheads is maybe 12. Yeah.
So is that Opencast you're talking about there?
Yes.
Well, so would you like to set a scene? Because I know we had a chat a few months ago about what Opencast is, just to kind of tell people in 30, 60 seconds kind of what you guys do. Because I believe you're on a big recruitment drive at the moment as well, just to help sell the dream.
Yes. So Opencast is a IT consultancy. We have a number of different techies in this world. Is called. We do a sort of methodological agile. So we're working with Scrum teams. This is all the jargon of like 8-10 people in a team, each with a different role: a Scrum master, user experience, software development, databases, testing. So in the old days, when a government department wanted to build a new piece of software, that they'd get people in, they'd say, oh, it's going to cost you £25 million. We'll deliver it by Christmas. And they go away, do all of the work that they thought was needed, and then bring it back at Christmas. And everyone will go, well, actually, we've moved on and this is completely useless. Whereas if you do it in an agile format, you're doing daily meetings with the team, with the client, and with sprints that are 8, 10, 12 weeks long. And you can check in much more with the jigsaw pieces that are all being built, so that the jigsaw at the end should fit together and should be providing the service that is much more accurately matching where the organization at the same time has been going. Okay. So that was our premise of the business: software teams for hire. And we worked for many years. One of our earliest clients in the North East was HMRC, the Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the UK tax office. And our teams very much peer to some of the teams in the HMRC Digital Delivery Centre in Newcastle, and everyone got on really well. Our teams were really rated for their closure of getting it right and doing it on time, on budget, at pace. So in the pandemic, our teams were called on to work to deliver the HMRC, the furlough schemes, the government's response to getting support for people. And we did a couple or three of the biggest systems, the freelance furlough. We worked on Eat Out to Help Out, and we worked on a number of policy initiatives. The policy team in the Treasury in London were like, if you do this, this, and this in this phase in the pandemic, will this help stimulate the economy? We worked on a number of those which didn't get delivered, but Eat Out to Help Out was one, slightly random in hindsight, get people back into restaurants to have a free meal on HM Treasury to try and stimulate activity, to see if, post pandemic, they would be able to build back.
No, I must have just had a comment from
an IT company with software guys, a great team.
That's the 5-second version. But honestly, but I love it because you have gone on to do some really, really great things. We've got a comment from James who's basically saying that if you're looking for agile or scrum practitioners, armed forces people or ex-forces people are very, very good at that. So thank you, James.
Yes.
But one thing, I'm glad you mentioned it, because again, I think people love to hear from companies that have been involved with stuff that they've probably interacted with. I remember Eat Out to Help Out, and I think it was a funny one because the whole pandemic was a time when nobody really knew what to expect, what was going to happen, how long was it going to last. And actually, I remember the first Eat Out to Help Out meal that we had, and we went to a steakhouse in Newcastle, and I think it was half price. It wasn't completely free, but actually it kind of worked. But what I also love is the fact that, especially someone from the North East, when big government contracts come up, the fact that they then go to the regions that, we can actually really kind of help build tech hubs and areas of genuine expertise. And if I can use that as a seamless segue onto Dynamo North East, would you be happy to just tell us about that? What do those guys do?
Well, so along the way, I set up a networking group for the corporate tech world. This is like also nearly 10 years old, but we were quite early into how important tech business is going to be in the whole economy, but also in every city of 1 million people like Newcastle, because the future is digital transformation. All science, all manufacturing, everything now requires a laptop at the front end to actually drive it. And it was something that I had realized because I had done a bit of marketing of UK tech and digital entrepreneurship with what is now BEIS, the Business Department of Government, doing a regional program. And when I then moved to the Northeast, I was surprised how lively and growing the tech sector was, that didn't really get a lot of airtime nationally when I was in London. And we would show people around an office who said, oh, we want to expand. Have you got an office for 10 desks? And then we wouldn't hear from them. We would chase them up and go, well, actually, we don't need an office for 10 desks. We now need an office for 20 desks. And then we'd chase them up and they'd go, actually, we need an office for 30 desks. So I was kind of getting the sense that this was an exciting growth market. And the example in the Northeast of the biggest tech business is Sage Software, which has grown indigenously, by the locals, to being the 5th or 6th largest software company in the world, stock market darling with its growth through the last 20 years of the century, and continuing to grow. But the great thing about those products were that you knew that 70% of your revenues were booked for next year, because once you got your accounting package in, pretty much everyone buys it again next year. And then the rest of the 30% to get you to the same size as you were last year, plus a bit more, was, well, the government's going to change the rules on how you post national insurance contributions, or they're going to change the numbers. So everyone's going to have to buy the add-ons, which is which is classic software as a service, SaaS businesses. Once they're locked in, there's growth. And I'm like, if I'm going to start, when I first moved to the Northeast, and with the connections and the market that I knew, I looked at the creative industries, at marketing services, PR, and did some great hanging out with some of the people who have done really well in that world in the Northeast. But I felt that they weren't as locked in as the tech stuff. And so when Mike and I started talking, it was like, I definitely want to set up a tech business because there's so much more growth in it. And it's been a positive policy-wise for the regions that most government departments require, there's been, in all my time in business, 30 plus years, whatever, there've been, government must help get small to medium-sized businesses in to deliver services. It's a real problem with the symmetry, megacorp and tiny minnows that don't work that well together, and it's so easy to get mishaps. But the policy that HMRC have used and other government departments are now, there must be a prime contractor, but you must give a certain amount, 10, 15% of your business to SME subcontractors. And Opencast Software did really well with that. And that was part of the work around Dynamo. How do we build a network of people who we can foster and support to get the bigger contracts? And what can we learn from big corporate tech businesses that are, good for the region? Because, I'm from the region, I have property in the region. If the region prospers, that's great for me. I've got 4 sons. Where are they going to end up in the world? It would be nice if more people were here, if there was more values. Hoult's Yard is in NE6, which at the time was the 75th worst postcode in the UK. If you can incrementally gain, and this is been followed up with the talk about leveling up. If you can bring the bottom percentages up, it's the same in your customer base. If you've got customers that are not profitable, either you get rid of them, which you can't do in a country, but you bring them up to that level. Instead of them being a cost, they're being a value adding to the business. That really supercharges the business. So that's kind of my passion for the region. And then how can I help? Well, I went to a load of sort of navel gazing, how are we going to brand the region things? And I got so kind of pissed off with the talking shop. I was like, I'm going to do something positive. This region doesn't have a corporate tech network. I can really see how it can gel together. I've done some network stuff, and we started Dynamo, and I got sponsored by Accenture. And I said, well, let's do a conference and let's get Tim Berners-Lee, the founder of the internet, to be our guest speaker. And that was the scale of the ambition. Wow. We're going to get, we might be small, we might be out of the way, but we can still, get some big hitters. We actually couldn't get Tim Berners-Lee, but we got Rory Kethlen-Jones, who was the BBC's tech correspondent. And we said, how do you make the Northeast into Silicon Valley? And his reply was, don't even try, because the Northeast is completely different to Silicon Valley. So what you need is to find the pieces in the local economy that you can support and foster, which is, again, economic theory around clusters. One jewelry shop on its own is quite lonely. 2 jewelry shops fight against each other and go, why are you next door? Because you're killing my competition. A street of jewelry shops becomes a destination for people who want to buy a wedding ring. Where do I go? I go to the cluster. And so that's been the theory around tech in the Northeast. If we cluster together, particularly in industry verticals, finance, tax and accounting, medical, manufacturing, then you, instead of being like a small lone competitor against the world, you're working on skills programs, you're working on marketing story, and you're also helping the inward investment story for the region. If I'm coming to UK and I'm a payments processing business, which city should I go to if I don't want to afford London? Well, Newcastle, because the tax office puts billions through the banking system every day. Sage Software is here. The Prescription Pricing Authority, which is the biggest government department outside London, headquartered in North East with 1,200 staff, processes 1 billion prescriptions a year. So there's a chunk of tech. And so that was the pitch for Dynamo. And we've gone on to take that pitch through collaboration, innovation, skills, and noise/advocacy to pitch for government to support the North East. And I was on the team that initiated the idea, which became Newcastle University's National Innovation Centre for Data, which is a £30 million investment in a building that's on the Helix site, the Science Central site next to St James's Park and the University and the city centre. And it's those sort of anchor buildings that start the narrative for growth. Yeah,
I agree, and it's also really the impact has actually been felt, if that makes sense. When you, so I know where Holt's Yard is, and near there you have Wall's End, where you have lots of different shop building, and actually within your kind of lifetime, I don't know when they stopped building ships, but 70s, 80s, and actually the transformation in that short time period to where we are now is incredible. But something, because I'm conscious of time, that I really wanted to ask you is that with your co-founder, you did something quite cool at Opencast Software where you gave away 1/3 of the company. Can you explain to me why you did that and how that went?
So the biggest challenge for Opencast Software is the war for talent, in the tech sector, in many sectors in our current economy, where despite the storm clouds that people want to talk about predicting disaster, there's more people in jobs now, even back out of the pandemic, than there have been since I was born, basically 55 years ago, give or take. And so if you're going to grow a business, you have to attract people and retain people. And my mantra for Opencast Software is good teamwork. Good teamwork, good meaning we want to provide purpose in our work. We give them 2.5% of our profits to charity. And we do have work with veterans organizations, with LGBT+. We've got great diversity, 22 different nationalities. We've got great gender balance and all of those things. We want a great team, because that gels the reason to come to the office and to participate, that we've got all sorts of programs to play as a team, rather than being a remote worker in your bedroom on a Scottish island with no interaction. And then the work we want is really challenging, deep, work to, the national work is big computers, big databases, big scale, big challenges. Yes, it's also helping people to get their benefits or pay their taxes. There's a social good to that, but it's not, I'm not overplaying that. We just help, we get paid to deliver government programs. And the business has grown well, but it's a self-fulfilling piece in my mind, that if everyone has got a share of the business and feels a sense of ownership, then we can retain them. And rather than get the venture capital guys in to get money out for me and co-founder, we decided that we should firstly make sure that there was upside for all of our team. And so there's a government program called EMI, which is executive. It's a misnomer because it's mostly given to like 3 or 4 people who are running or driving a business who are not the owners. But it's called Executive Management Incentive, the EMI scheme, which allows you to get a value for the business and from the HMRC that say, yeah, okay, that you're not giving away sort of shares by way of ducking out of income tax, but you're also not giving people something that's of value that then disappears and you have to pay some kind of tax on. It's a relatively simple scheme, and we then made a very complicated system for ourselves, where each member of staff gets an allocation depending on how their salary, where their salary is. And as their salary goes up, the allocation goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So that the people who are on £100,000 will get proportionately more than the people on 25,000, because we think those are people we want to retain. They've been with us for longer, and they're going to be more a target to recruitment. So we set up that scheme. It's only been going a short length of time, but we hope that in 4 years, we will be able to give each person of the scheme in 4 years' time an additional year of take-home pay as the growth in their pot. And we hope that they don't sell those, and that we all keep growing, and we grow this business, because we were 80 at the start of the pandemic. We're 400 now. We could be probably 500 by the end of the year. And we've only scratched the surface. We've got 100 people in our team at the Department of Work and Pensions, but there are 4,000 IT people working at there. So our market share is still small. Accenture, which is, miles ahead of us, has hundreds of thousands. It's 700,000 people in that business.
Wow.
So the pathway for our model is to grow, but our sense was to try and be much more John Lewis, shared ownership about it. And we're just doing our next cohort to make sure that every kind of year or 6 months we add people into the scheme, so that it will become much more reality for people. As we say, your shares that were worth 20p are now worth 50p, and then they're worth £1, and then they're worth £3. So it was a act of generosity, because we never thought we'd get this far, and it's great that we have, and we will still hang on into it. But I also think culturally it creates an environment where people feel that the bosses, who are the owners, are also massively pro growing other people's.
No, I've got it. I think it's great. And it was just there was some really good headlines about it that I couldn't not ask you. I think it was just one of those things we could do. So towards the end of each interview, there's a few different questions that I love to ask, and this is a great way to share knowledge and experience and that kind of thing. And especially for someone with your background and your experience and things that you've done, would you be happy to almost share the best piece of advice you ever had?
I got these in advance, so I had a little bit of a thought about it. And I think the best piece of advice is, it's a kind of card game analogy, to always underplay your hand.
Okay.
Never overplay. People talk about humble leadership, or, not alpha male, but beta male leadership. And I think it's always better to try and not oversell and not to push things, but to let things emerge. I also got a very good piece of advice, because you can think there's a whole world of problems and challenges, and that as an entrepreneur, a leader, you can feel quite lonely in all of that. And it is to give yourself a pat on the back. If you've had a great day and you've achieved something big that you thought was going to take a bunch of time, you finish it by lunchtime, take the day off. You acknowledge where your success has been in that piece of the journey, and get out there and do some other stuff.
No, I think it's very cool. And it's something that I am guilty of this, that I'm on to the next thing. I'm on to my list of tasks across multiple businesses is never ending. And I'm 39 now, so almost at the same age you were when you talked about it earlier. And it's that hunger to want to deliver, but then likewise take a day off every so often. I think it's really good advice, because most people kind of don't. The next question that I love to ask, if you were to pick yourself at a younger age, it could be at school, it could be any point in your career, almost to, if you could travel back in time and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
So when you're the challenge with entrepreneurs is that when it's going really well, you don't want to sell out. And when it's going really badly, you go, oh, I wish I could sack this and do something else. And I suppose, apropos, sort of similar to backing, patting yourself on the back when you realize and you mark that you've achieved something. I think it would have been good to kind of bank some of the gains along the way. I, as a chess player, I used to be very good on attack and then get checkmated all the time because I didn't have any defense. And so I think it's always good to think about that. Maybe that's the older person, because you want the energy of youth to keep going. I'm indestructible, and I'll just keep going. But maybe I would have done better if I'd kind of, for me as well, I think it's helpful to sort of sell something and move on, don't keep the same stock, get that, run through the tills.
I've got you. Just before we wrap up, I have two things. The first one, what's the dream? You've had such a varied career. You've done loads of really kind of great stuff in different sectors and, helping to build whole communities in terms of tech, and you have the property and you have everything else. Fast forward 5-10 years, however long you wish. What's the dream? What makes Charlie Hoult excited? What makes you still want to work?
Well, I realized that I can't do everything, and I can't set up a business a week, even though I always have ideas. I go, oh, that would be a great business. So I've got, and you've got to make bigger bets rather than start something small. And but I have 4 sons who are all leaving school and then going to uni, and I sort of, one of the dreams, I'm sure they'll never want to work with me, but is like to create some kind of conglomerate where we're all connected, but we all have our own independence. And the Scandinavians do this really well. And, there's always Rothschild's bank, set up where the father Rothschild sent his 4 sons to UK, England, France, Germany, Italy to set up branches of the bank that did different things. It would be nice to set up, that's kind of dynastic thought, isn't it? To set up something where everyone's happy to work together in a great business. And so, that something like that might be an interesting business. Cool. I've always wanted a finance business that's like on direct debit. Everyone's just, and you're absolutely rinsing the money. But it gives you a platform to do stuff. Yeah. So, it's that it gets me going to prove you can do these things, and it creates some money that you can then use. I've enjoyed a bit of philanthropy to give money away to try and target some of these things in the social problems that we have in any region, and to get involved with fixing society. So there's like entrepreneurs, you want to make money, but you also want to make history. Yeah. And I can't think that's where I'm at. I've always been at that. Somebody else said to me, it's easy to make money, but if you just do that, you can be very, very boring.
Yeah. But I think you've proven with your history and the things that you've done and the breadth of things that you've done, and realistically, you probably could have, not necessarily had to work as hard as you have because of the heritage and that kind of thing. But so I think you do it for the challenge and the fun and the ideas and the drive, not just about the cash. Yeah. And I think that comes across, which I think is really good. Conscious time.
Maybe my younger self, I should say, not to be distracted by too many things. And I'm like, got too many things going on. Maybe I should have just nailed it with one thing.
But variety is the spice of life, I think, is the you never know. Is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go? Recruitment drive for Opencast. Anything you wish? The floor is yours.
No. I'm on LinkedIn. I boosted from 3,000 to 15,000 people just by shamelessly friending everybody, and then they friend me back nowadays. So I play out a lot of my business stuff on LinkedIn. So friend me. I don't have that funny LinkedIn thing to be followed, maybe that would change my world. I just like to connect with people, and happy to connect, and then keep talking. You know, I reply to everybody who messages me, sometimes quite short ways, but if people want advice and you know, leg up, I'd love to help.
No, cool. Well, a genuine thank you for your time today. I think it's been really fascinating that in a podcast where you have more time, you actually get to explore different things, and hopefully even people that might have known you for 10, 15 years might have heard stuff that is new, is different in it. And that's what I love about this, that yes, you can do a 30-second clip, but I think there's some more magic that you can really drill down into if you can spend a bit more time to kind of talk to people. So genuine thank you for your time. I will stay in touch. I will continue to support and promote Opencast and others as much as I kind of can. And yeah, have a wonderful week.
Great, thank you. It's been fantastic to put me through my paces and make me think backwards over some of the things that I've done. No, yeah, and I'm sure we could talk for hours more.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
Great. Cheers.
Cheers, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Bye.